Hello everyone, it's Jen from Old Tinkerer Studio. In this tutorial, we will be exploring the interface of Quixel Mixer. This tutorial was a request from Mr. Zeeth. The link to download Quixel Mixer is in the description. So let's get on with the tutorial. We'll be exploring the interface of Quixel Mixer in this tutorial. Mixer is an all-in-one texturing tool. You can use already existing materials within Mixer or make your own. There are also megascans, which are custom assets. You will need to sign up for a license, even though the basic program is free. If you sign up with your Unreal Engine account, you will have unlimited access to the megascans library, but this is only for use within Unreal Engine. When you first open Quixel Mixer, you'll be given the option to change where your Mixer files as well as your library files will be saved. To start a new material, select New Mix, then give the material name and select the resolution. For this portion of the tutorial, we will just explore one of the sample materials. I will use the Broken Tiles material. When you initially start working on a material, you will be in the Setup tab. This is where you can access your resolution, the type of model, a plane in this case, and the size, which is used for some properties within Mixer. Moving around in the Viewport is similar to Maya, but different from Blender. Scrolling the middle mouse button will zoom in and out. Alt and the middle mouse button allows you to pan. To orbit, use Alt and the left mouse button. And to use the dolly zoom, use Alt and the right mouse button. In the top left, you can access various maps, such as roughness or occlusion, and preview them in the viewport. Next to the Maps drop-down menu, you can choose to view the material on various 3D objects. Mixer is based upon displacement maps. You can turn off the displacement with the displacement icon, or by pressing the D key. Next to displacement is the tiling option, which will show you what the material will look like when tiled. This can also be accessed using the T key. Lastly, we have the grid option, which you can turn on using the button or using the G key. Further to the right, we have the viewing options, such as perspective or right view. Next to the viewing options, we have lighting options, which can be used to show the material in various forms of light. If we open up the Layers tab, we see the layers that make up the material. To the right of the layers, we can see the textures that are used to make the material. If we select any of the other layers, we gain access to the individual textures. If you right-click on any of these sliders, you can reset them back to the default. If I select the gravel, I can change the threshold, which will change the amount of gravel on top of the tiles. The threshold option is what determines the displacement of the texture. If I change the blend to from above, notice that the gravel is now on top of the base mesh. Opacity mask blends the layers based on the opacity instead of the displacement or height. The opacity controls the transparency of a particular layer. Radius controls the fall off at the intersection between two different layers. Preserved details controls the radius's effect upon the base layer. Wrap to underline controls which layer's height information will be preserved. Blur underline blurs the high details of the underline mix. Placement allows you to move, rotate, and scale the layers. Tiling allows you to scale, repeat, rotate, and move the layers in the form of tiles. You can tile along the X or Y axis, together or separately, and change the number of repetitions. You can also offset the X and Y axis or rotate the layers. Freeform allows you to scale and rotate the material freely. Box projection means that the textures for a layer are projected onto a 3D model from 6 directions. Angle rotates the layer. And tilt will tilt the layer. Radius sets the sharpness or softness of the blends between the planes. Height influence blends the difference between the heights at the intersections of the layers. And scale sets the real-world scaling, with 1 being the correct scan size. Height frequency controls the surface layer and atlas or decal layers. High frequency controls the intensity of the finer details. Low frequency controls the intensity of the larger detail. And threshold determines what is considered high frequency or low frequency. The textures are all the textures for the particular layer. The albedo is the color data. You can change the color by clicking on the circle next to the title and using the color picker. The metalness determines how metallic the layer will be. White means that there will be more metalness. The roughness determines how rough the layer will be. White means more roughness. Displacement determines how the displacement map affects the layers. You have the ability to change the opacity, or the strength, or to remove it altogether. You can also load in your own displacement map. Normals determine how the normal map affects the layers. You have the ability to change the opacity and the strength, or remove it altogether. You can also load in your own normal map. You also have the ability to invert the normals along the X or the Y axis or to generate the normals from the displacement map. Occlusion determines the ambient occlusion, the light and shadow effects. You have the ability to change the opacity and the strength. The tools at the top allow you to bring in other layers quickly. The first tool is the Surface Layer tool. This tool will open your local library of materials. The online option gives you access to the Megascans library. You can choose any of the materials and add them to the current material. The next tool is the Decal or Atlas Layer tool. This tool allows you to add surface, atlas, which are real-world scanned assets, 3D, imperfections, displacement, and smart materials. You can choose any of the materials and add them to the current material. The next tool allows you to add a solid layer. The next tool allows you to add a liquid layer. The next tool allows you to add a noise layer. And the next tool allows you to add a paint layer. The Display tab allows you to make further refinements to the viewport. The camera background allows you to choose between a gradient, which is the default, a flat color, or a skybox. Background blur can blur the background without interfering with the light in the scene. And field of view changes the field of view of the camera. Light intensity sets the intensity of the light. Light rotation rotates the light in the scene. Shadow resolution specifies the shadow resolution. GPU tessellation specifies the GPU tessellation for tiling of a flat surface. Anti-aliasing minimizes the distortion of a low-resolution image. Subdivisions control the size of the subdivisions of the grid. Fade subdivisions will fade the smaller sections of the grids as you zoom out. And grid color allows you to change the color of the grid. The options under the Performance tab allows you to control Mixer's performance. Viewport resolution allows you to choose between full and half the resolution output of the viewport. Target frame rate is the frame rate of the viewport. You can set it between 30 and 60 frames per second. High quality blur smooths displacements by blurring. Downsample textures means that Mixer will temporarily lower the texture resolution when changes are made, and once the change is made, the resolution will return to normal. Normal matching sets the resolution of the normal map when changes are made. Bake layers enables the baking of underlying layers for better performance. Lower viewport resolution will lower the resolution of the viewport. Lower tessellation will lower the tessellation. Disable anti-aliasing will disable and enable anti-aliasing. Disable shadows will disable and enable shadows. Displace back faces will disable and enable back faces. Prefer loading JPEG allows Mixer to prefer the JPEG file format for memory optimization. The Export tab is where you will find all the options for exporting your material. Surface name is the name of the material. Export location is where you want to save the material. You can create a subfolder, add resolution to the file names, and open the folder after export. The export format is the file format that you want to save the maps in, such as PNG or JPEG. The export resolution is the resolution of the maps. This can be different from the initial resolution you chose at the beginning. And the Maps section allows you to choose which maps to export. I hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.